Hi, and welcome back to Plastic Models by a Regular Dude in part 9 of the Asuka 1/35 scale M4A376 wet VVSS late. So today, now that I'm ready to start doing some weathering, I'm going to start doing some oil dot stuff. And what I'm going to be using to do that is my 502 Abteilung oils. I'm using these three right now, which is light mud, yellow, and earth. Scratch the yellow. I'm not using that. I tried to use it and it was too bright. So basically I'm using light mud and earth. And this is what I've got done so far down here. And now, whoops. So let me show you how I'm doing it. So I've got my odorless mineral spirits, and what I'm doing is I am taking some of the oil like this, getting some on the old toothpick here, and just dabbing dots here and there and everywhere. Just getting some randomly, or as random as I can get it, spread around like that. And then I am using the brown, doing the same thing. Just so I can get some dirtiness going around here. All right. So then, using this cheap Hobby Lobby brush, getting some thinner on it, and then wiping most of it off. And just using a stippling motion like that. Start spreading it around. Look like you got too much of one color going somewhere. Just move it back and forth. Now this is just to give a base layer of a dusty, dirty look. And this is why I wait to glue the bogies and stuff on, because I mean this would be impossible if those were in place. Now you can't really see behind it, so it may not be that big a deal, but it's just easier, I think, to do it like this. Just keep working it around like that. Now, if it looks like you have too much, like the other side, I had way too much going on. So what I did is I took my wider brush and I got some thinner on it and just wiped it off. Wiped off a good portion of it. And that kind of made it a little bit not quite so heavy. So just keep going and keep going like that, and then once it dries, it'll look really cool. And that'll be the base layer on that. Okay, so I've got the base layer of oils on, so now I want to do some mud in here so I can start thinking about getting the suspension on here. So what I'm going to do is, using Vallejo thick mud, I'm going to attempt to do some mud effects on here. Some thick mud first, then I'll use the thinner splash mud, see what I can come up with. Alright, so this stuff is pretty thick and goopy. Now, I used to make my own using pigments, but it used a lot of pigment, and I was basically doing the same thing I can do with this. So put this on here like this. Now, I've only used this stuff like one other time, so we'll see how it turns out. What I'm trying to get right now is some like textured mud effects. So I'm not going to be real concerned about the coverage as much, because I'm going to be using the splash mud, and I'm going to be using some washes and stuff like that over that. This is just to add some texture instead of it just being flat color. I want some up here because you know, falling off of the upper as the track as it passes over and clacks around on the skids and the return rollers and stuff. And as I get more toward the front, I'm going to make it not quite so heavy. And I'm going to be using some oils to alter the color, because I don't want it to be just this color here, because this is rather boring. I'm mainly doing this for the texture aspect of it. Get a lot right there, because having it all built up and everything. Well, this is an acrylic product, and like I said, I've only used this stuff once, so you know, we'll see how it turns out. This is like kind of a relatively new thing for me here. I'm going to do this one side completely before I move on to the other side. I need to make sure I get some in the front. Hopefully this camera angle is working for all of y'all. Don't want to get too much of the texture on this part of it. I want it more around where the tracks are doing their thing. So let's do that. Get some down in there. And flip that down a little bit. Get some on there. Don't want too much. Okay, so we'll let that dry a little bit. Let's see what it turns out looking like. So while that's drying, the next thing I need to do is I need to get some mud on the back of this suspension, because even though you're not going to see it, you might catch a little bit of, you know, visuals from it. So I got to make sure I've got some mud on here. This is another benefit of not, you can really get it applied a little bit better than if you did it with the suspension attached to the vehicle. And I can control a lot better and not get all over the wheels, because I don't want any of this heavy mud on the wheels. Maybe a little bit around the hubs, but the rest of it's mainly going to be splash stuff. So that's why I got to be kind of careful in how I apply this. I don't want to get it on the return rollers if I can help it, so I don't have to clean it off. But it's easier to get, whoops, easier to get the mud in the back here and on top. Like that. Then the rest of it I can reach whenever it's they're actually attached to the vehicle. So obviously I don't want to have any on top of this skid, because there really wouldn't be any on there. But everywhere else, I want to make sure I get it in there. So as you can see, I'm using a smaller brush this time to apply it, so I can be a little more controlled in how I put it on. It's easier to do it like this than with it on the vehicle, in my opinion. I mean, I've done it the other way too, but this way it's kind of nice. Makes it easier. To get it put where I want. Like that. So I'm going to try something here. I'm going to put a blob. Let's see. If I can get it to kind of streak around like that, like chunks have gotten stuck, and then rotate it around. That's kind of cool. May not be like that on every wheel, but hey, I'm all for trying new things. Then there's going to be splash stuff on there too, but so I think that looks cool. Then what you think? Okay, all right. So I'm going to continue doing that on the rest of this stuff so it can dry, so I can eventually get it glued on there. Okay, next thing I want to do, I've already done one, but is do the drive sprockets and idler wheels. So hopefully I can do this where you can actually see it. Don't want to get too much on the inside there, or else, you know, we could have trouble with it fitting onto the tank, but mainly just want to get some. Most of this is going to be the more fluidy mud, but we also want to get some on the inside here. Now keep in mind what I'm doing here. This is the old 10 by 10 rule. 10 people could have 10 totally different ways of doing this, and I'm sure some of those are way better than what I'm doing, but this is what I'm doing, and it'll pass for my meager collection and skills. And then on the front here, on the outside, I don't want to have quite as much because most of this is going to be the splash mud, which doesn't have all this texture to it. I do want to get some in here, but not. I actually got more than I really wanted, but the rest of it's going to be mainly splash stuff. Okay. So there's that. And then the same thing here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it on here. I'm probably going to have to clean that center part out there where the axle goes in, because I don't want that to be all crudded up. I have to get it off the edges as well. But again, there's going to be a lot of splash mud effects on this. Okay, so then let's get one of my sharp Tamiya cotton buds. I don't use these very often because they're really stiff, but they're good for doing stuff like this because they're really stiff. Okay, so there's that. And again, the rest will be splash mud in there. So I'm just going to put a little bit on here. Same thing. See, some people's like, well, why do you do all that pre-weathering stuff like washes and all that when it's just going to be all gunked up? And well, because not all the time is it all covered, so you gotta need to have it there just in case, and it's also good practice. Okay, so I'll do the same to the other one. Let that dry for a bit, and then we'll come back and do some splash mud. Alright, so next what I'm doing is I mixed up a wash of dark mud and earth to get kind of this grubby looking color. Now, to cut down on the brightness of this mud color, I'm using this wash and just dabbing it on a bit to kind of cut down on the starkness and give it a little bit more depth, because just the single color of the mud, it looks pretty flat. So I'm just putting it on here like this, just to give it a little bit of variation. Hopefully you can see what's going on. This one's done, this one's not, so hopefully you can see this one's a little more realistic in color. It's not done, obviously, but it looks a little bit better than just that by itself. Now on the hull, I'm focusing more along the bottom, so it looks more like a little bit fresher mud. At least that's what I'm telling myself I'm doing. But it helps a lot. Even some of the details, they kind of disappear because of the mud. Kind of jump back out, like these bolts that are underneath the mud. You can see them again, whereas right there you can't really see them as well. But when you put the wash on, it kind of makes them pop out again. Nice thing is this stuff will kind of bleed around and spread and kind of be somewhat random in the way it soaks in. Hopefully you can see what I'm trying to accomplish here. Probably do this thing. This is just regular oil wash. You'd probably do it with any enamel washes, whatever your favorite method is. Again, that's going to kind of mellow out once I do the splash stuff. And if any of you watch my channel much, you'll know that I rarely do the same thing twice. I just can't find a method and just stick with it. I'm always doing something different or whatever. I guess it's that quest to finally find something I really like. So there's that. So then we'll come back here in a little bit and hit it up with some splash mud effects once this kind of dries a bit. All right, here's how it looks after the after that wash. That really helped, I think. So next thing I need to do is do some of the splash effects here using Vallejo Splash Mud. Alright, so now I'm going to use the brown splash mud. It's darker, almost chocolatey looking. So hopefully I'm going to be able to do this to where you can see it. My camera angle, which I can just never get camera angles that I like. So all it's doing is just adding some additional color to it so it's not quite so monotone. Might not even be able to see it that much on camera, but it is getting on there, and it's, there we go. Okay, so we'll let that dry a little bit after I put some on the back, and should be able to move on to installing the running gear. Okay, next up, using some Vallejo pigments, starting with burnt umber, I'm going to kind of dust underneath here first before I install the running gear, because once I get the running gear, it'll make this a lot more difficult. So basically, I'm just going to put some of this on here. Now, something to keep in mind if you use pigments, if you don't know this already. Don't, if you're going to spray any more clears or anything like that, do it before you use pigments, because if you spray a clear on top of this, bye-bye pigments. You will not be able to see them at all. I'm just doing this to dirty up underneath and add just one more layer of color a bit. So we did that. So now let's use some of this. This one is light sienna, which is a nice dusty color. It'll tone down the reddishness of that burnt umber. Because the effect I'm going, I don't want any wet mud on here. I want it to be like dried and crusty mud, and it's alright. I'm not too stoked with it, but it's going to be behind, so it'll be alright. I don't know. I get frustrated with weathering sometimes, because sometimes what ends up on the kit is not what I have envisioned in my head. Yeah, it's a learning process. Alright, I think I'm going to call that on the pigments underneath here and get the running gear on, because if not, I'm going to get frustrated. Put this aside. So there's that. Alright, so first thing I got to do is I got to peel off all of my tape that I put on here to keep the plastic bare, so it well, there's a military aircraft flying over right now. We get so many of those, it's unbelievable. Let's see, get one of these. Hopefully, yep, just about perfect. Okay, so now I can glue those on. Do a little bit of work on there. So I'm going to glue these on, and then we'll come back and take a look. Okay, so I've got the running gear on. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use this UMP Ultimate Modeling Products Ultimate Weathering Wash, which is a clay wash, and this one is light dirt, and I'm going to use this to add yet another layer of stuff on here. So let me put it on here, and I'll show you what it's going to look like. Because what you do with this stuff is you put it on here, and then you let it dry. And then you come back and wipe some of it off. Okay, so something else I've done here is I put a little bit of that clay wash on the wheels. Now I've already cleaned this one up, but this is what it looks like before I clean it up. Okay, and all that's doing is just adding another layer of dust. And these flipping Q-tips are horrible. But as you can see, it's wiping it off. And then I put some on the, God, these things are horrible. On the wheels. Now, some of you may be looking, if you haven't seen my earlier videos, you may be saying, well, you didn't do a very good job cleaning up those seams. Well, or mold lines. Well, I did that for a reason, and I explained it. This vehicle is meant to be one that has been in theater for not very long. And there is photographic evidence of these wheels having a seam line down the middle. Now, it wasn't a cop-out like, oh, you know, I didn't clean them very good, so I'm using that as an excuse. No, this was planned. See, you can see it right there and right there. I wanted to do that intentionally because I want it to be a vehicle. It's dirty, but it's not beat up and well used yet. So I also put some of it in here. Man, I have to get some new Q-tips. These are really bad. Don't buy cheap Q-tips when you buy them. I'm just trying to use these up. Just another layer and element of dust. Now, one thing that's kind of cool is the deposits around those foundry markings in there, and really makes those pop. So that's kind of cool. All right, so we'll do that. And but as I was saying, I want this to look like it's been in theater not for very long, but in dirty and muddy conditions. So there is method to the madness. So I'm going to go ahead and add this stuff to all these other parts that are kind of clean, so I can start getting those dirtied up. And once I get that done, I should be able to put the tracks on, and we can move up to doing some more weathering up top. Okay. Alright, so here's what it looks like. So the next thing I need to do, I forgot I should have done it earlier and I totally forgot. So I need to glue the suspension, because this right here is problematic whenever you put the suspension or the tracks on and you try and tighten them up. It just really kind of, you know, pushes these up. So I need to do that. I also need to get these idlers adjusted so they're tight. Because these are adjustable. So anyway, I'm going to glue those, and then we'll come back and put the tracks on. Alright, so I glued the suspension, and I installed the tracks, and tracks I'm kind of disappointed in. They're just a little too saggy for my taste, but you know what? We're just going to have to deal with it because I don't have any extras. And this project is dragging on and on. So, next thing I need to do is I need to apply some mud on the tracks themselves. And what I'm going to do, I'm not going to put a whole lot, but I'm going to put the textured stuff all along the end connectors here. And once I do that, then I will come in. Now I'm not going to put any on the inside because the wheels would be, you know, knocking all that off. So I don't want to. I don't want to put any on the inside. And then I'll put some in the duck bills. Now the nice thing about this is it's going to cover up a lot of this paint that's flaked off. Because for some wacky reason, I just cannot figure out how to do vinyl tracks with a lot of handling. The paint just flakes off, which makes sense because it's vinyl and it's, you know, flexible and nothing really sticks to it. So in the future, I'm definitely going to be sticking with my aftermarket tracks, and my brand of choice is Kaizen. If you watch my channel very much, you know I like the Kaizen tracks. They work really good, they look good, they're not too difficult to put together, not too fiddly as they say, but they work really well. So I'm going to stick with those in the future. I should have done that on this, but I didn't. But it'll be okay. I mean, because since this is going to be muddied up really good, it's not really going to matter. And it'll look fine. And then come in up here. Get that. I want a little bit of texture going on there because, you know, like there would be mud jammed in there. Now I don't want to get it on the chevrons, but I do want to get some, you know, in between, so I'm going to have to be pretty tricky with that. I may have to get a smaller brush or something, or just be careful and make sure I wipe the chevrons off. Or I could just use the splash mud because it'll be easier to control to get in between the chevrons. I don't need to really do it on the bottom because that's going to be obviously sitting on the ground. Okay, get it on the So you can see what I'm doing here. So I'm going to continue on around on both sides, and then I'll come back and show you what I'm going to do as far as using the splash mud to do the chevrons. Alright, so there's the tracks. pretty much done. So next thing I need to do though is in looking at the way these duckbills protrude out, I need to actually do some more mud splattering on the side. So I'm going to use the splattering stuff and see if I can do it without it slinging and blobbing too much. So here's what I'm doing. I'm just dipping the very tip of this brush and using air from my airbrush to splatter this on there. Find I can get a little bit better control than trying to flick it with a brush. But just trying to get some splatters up on the side. Now I'm going to tone down the starkness of it with like kind of a mist coat of buff or something like that, just to make it look dusty. This is working pretty good. Alright, I think that'll do. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is I want to add a little bit more, another kind of layer. I'm using my clay wash for this. I'm just going to darken this edge up a little bit here. Like that. Do it on the other side. I'm really I really like these clay washes. They work really well. Easy to use. But as I say, you can't do anything over top of it, like clear. I mean, you can, but it's pretty much going to disappear. Okay, so now I'm going to just randomly put some on the sides here. Mainly just to add like some dust. Because I want to get some dust and stuff in the edge of that dust skirt strip that's right along there, because you can barely see it right now. By doing this, it's going to add an element of dirt and filth just built up in the edge. So I'll do that side, and while that's drying, I'm going to do this side. Getting kind of low too. I'm going to have to order me some more. This light dirt is the one I use the most. They have some other colors I want to try. There's concrete and stuff like that, and I have it, and I haven't really found a real opportunity to use it. It just hasn't been a appropriate color for stuff. Also, note real quick, like my decals, I'm not getting any deposits on the carrier film. My clear coat was successful as far as kind of filling in that carrier film blending it in with the surface. That's why I like that Model Master acryl clear. I just got some in, as a matter of fact, and I got some semi-gloss in. I'm kind of eager to try out. Also want you to take note that I have managed to avoid breaking that hatch off. And some of you may also be wondering when I'm going to paint the periscope. Well, that'll be soon. I just realized I hadn't painted it yet today. But, you know. Alright, now to add a little bit more variety to it, I'm going to use this mud, which is kind of a browner color, but it'll kind of mix in with the, I'm hoping it'll mix in, whoops, sorry I bumped the camera. Hopefully it'll mix in with the brown to just make it a little dirtier color. We shall see. If it doesn't, well, it's going to be looking stupid. Okay, so we'll do that like that and let that dry. Do some on this side. I don't want to get too much on there, but just want to add a little bit of variety of color there. Okay, so we'll let that dry for a minute. All right, now that it's dry, take this here Q-tip. Rub on it like that. What that'll do is that'll kind of blend it in a little bit. That's where you don't have this stark line. Make it look a little dirty. Bring out the detail of that strip. Like that, give it a nice dirty dirtiness going on there. I'm kind of stoked. It's looking pretty good. Same thing on this side. Kind of cool. We got some on the letters there so they don't look so stark. Starting to look a little dirty. Layer upon layer of stuff. Like that. So there's that. So the next thing, let's see, I already did some on the front here. I put some of the light dirt in the edges there. Let me show you what I did. Add a little bit more. So we'll put a little bit on the edge here, like that, a little bit in there. This is basically what I did earlier. Put some around the tow hook there. Anywhere where like dirt would kind of deposit and not get rubbed off by the crew as quickly. some along this ridge here. Whoa, shaky, just had some coffee. I like the added challenge of having had coffee, and see if I can continue working on my model. Let's put some along here and see what we can do right along that lower edge. Some underneath there. I'm just going to do the front because I'm going to work on the top and stuff on the next video. So let's see what that looks like after it dries. All right, it's had time to dry, so let's work on this a little bit. See if I can zoom in a little so you can actually see what I'm doing. So just rubbing it off on the edges, blending the edges a little bit, leaving it a little heavier on the outside edge so it looks like build up. Use one of my, you know what, you can use brushes too. Oh, it's too stiff. So you can do the same thing with the brush if you need to get in somewhere tight. I mean, you can do the same thing doing other methods. I just like the clay wash because it's got kind of a dusty look, and for me, it's easy to use. I mean, you can get do the same thing with oils. But I like this stuff. It's pretty versatile. I really like it for doing dusty vehicles. Okay, let's see what we get down here. See a nice little build up in there. Kind of a sharp edge underneath there, so let's take care of that. The nice thing is, if you don't like it, you can pretty much get water and just wash it off. Just leaves a little bit of a dusty build-up in the edges. Oils might be a little bit easier to control, but all right, so that's what we got so far. All right, so that is where it sits right now. So with all of the lower portion for the most part done, Got a little bit to do on the back, but I'll save that for the next video. I think I'm going to call this video the end for now. And next time when I come back, we will start working on the upper surfaces and maybe add some pigments, stuff like that. On the upper surfaces and on the turret. So that is it for now. As always, thanks for watching Plastic Models by a Regular Dude. And if you have any hints, tips, suggestions, blah blah blah, put them in the comments section down below. And since I'm doing a better job at checking my comments, I'll get back with you quicker, hopefully, and answer any questions you might have or respond to whatever you might have to say. So anyway, that's it for now. Thanks for watching Plastic Models by a Regular Dude. Till next time, we'll see you all later.